welcome and thank you for coming. So this is our second presentation regarding fire prevention in the city. We have a committee that was formed by the City Council, Fire Prevention Committee, that they tasked us to prepare this plan. It's called Community Wildfire Prevention Plan. And as part of this plan, we are conducting seminars and education, public education. This plan, we do need volunteers. We would like you to volunteer, and once this is, we'll be advertising it, noticing in the newsletter. Please read your newsletters, and we will be having workshops and producing this plan. Before I continue, though, I would like to welcome some of our council members and other dignitaries. We have Council Member Berenger, we have Mayor Pro Tem Yamersh, we have some board members, Community Association board members. No, I'm sorry. We have staff, Romans Community Association staff. Kristen Regg is the manager, and we have planning staff here. We have, of course, our wonderful fire department, forestry division. They're putting this on, and they arranged for the guest speakers. This is our second seminar, and we have a guest speaker, Connolly. She's the executive director of the Theodore Payne Foundation. Now, that foundation is a nonprofit foundation founded in, I think it's 1960, to promote education and prevention, protection of the California natural plants. They do much more than that, but she will tell you a little bit more about it, or Jay Lopez will present Connolly. Again, we are here to learn a little bit about how to make your house and your property safer. Join us in producing this community wildfire protection plan. One of the advantages of having this plan is that city can apply grants from the state government to implement the plan. So we can hopefully eventually we'll get some grants to do some of the tasks that we will be listing in that plan. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jay Lopez.
Could, Yolanda, for the people who weren't able to make it for the first presentation, can you tell them what that was about and how they can find that on the website, and also give them the dates for the next two presentations?
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So yes, this is our second. So our first one was in February, and we had a wonderful guest speaker who talked about how to protect your home. So he spoke about your vents and your roof, and what you can do with with your house. And that was a wonderful presentation. The next two will be, one is on June 6th, which will be a case study of what happened when there was a fire and the house was protected and not protected. So there's going to be a case study presentation. And on August 1st, we're going to have a presentation about insurance. How do you insure your home in the very high fire severity zone? This entire peninsula was designated in 2007 by the California Fire Marshal as being in a very high fire severity zone. And that means that anytime you build anything, you have to use different materials than anybody else that's not in the very high fire severity zone. The same with your clearance of your property. Most of your probably friends and neighbors will have clearance required of 100 foot from your house, whereas in the very high fire severity zone, it's required that your clearance for the fire department is minimum of 200 feet from your house. So being in that fire zone creates a little bit more rules and regulations. Today we have a professional videographer, and that's going to be on the city's website. And the last presentation, we did also put it, we didn't have a professional videographer, but we have it on our website. There's a link to YouTube. So if you go on our website, you can find the link to YouTube, and you'll be able to see what was done last time. I also want to mention that last time we were here, the fire department offered to do assessments of your home. So if anybody would like to sign up to have the fire department come in and actually give you an assessment of how you can make your house and your property safer. They will do that. What we're trying to do is collect several names at a time, or have a whole bunch of names. And the sign-up sheet is in the back on that green sheet that Eva is showing. So if you would like the fire department to come in and assess your home, please put your name there. And once we have a whole group of people, the fire department will come and do 4 or 5 in a day. They come all the way from Azusa and other cities, so they really need to do it, several at a time. And I think with that, Jay Lopez, he's the chief of the fire forestry.
Thank you very much. Jay Lopez, Assistant Chief, LA County Fire Department Forestry Division, and I'm part of the staff that is helping you with this. I'm going to have them introduce themselves and let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Rondon, LA County Fire, Natural Resources Section, Acting Assistant Chief.
Yep. Good evening, Dave Whitney, the Deputy Forester Fire Plan. Jay's old spot. Taught me everything he knows.
Good evening, my name is Mina DePieri. I'm a forestry technician for the Fire Plan Unit in the Forestry Division.
So the assessments will be conducted by Dave and Mina. You want to talk a little bit about the assessments, Dave?
Sure. Yeah, we come out and it's non-punitive.
You should get up there.
Oh. Black is thinning. Sure. It's
You want to back?
Sorry, Mike.
Sure. My voice does carry though. So we actually do about 8 to 10 maybe a day. It takes about a half hour, 45 minutes, depending on how talkative we get. It is non-punitive, so we're just out here to do an assessment on your structure. And a lot of times we do a very good job of brush clearance in terms of the defensible space, but what we do is get you to walk out your front door, turn around and look at your structure and see how you could prevent embers from igniting your structure. And a lot of the stuff on the houses that burn down, half of them burn down from the embers, over 50%. So a lot of it is housekeeping. A lot of it is truly the homeowner's responsibility to keep your house from burning down. And we're talking about leaf litter, newspapers, furniture, patio furniture. It's all petroleum based, it'll all burn. So we'll just come out and give you an assessment, like I said, non-punitive. If we find any illegal groves or anything, we don't care. We're truly just out there to give you an assessment. We'll write it up a little bit. So it's our pleasure to come out and do that for you guys. So, pleasure.
Thank you, David. I highly recommend you do that. What Dave means by non-punitive, we have the inspections that the firefighters do. We do it separately to that. So this is just one-on-one with you to determine what will be ways to make your home safer. And they have great knowledge, great experience. It'll be good for you. And those little things that we don't really pay attention, they'll be able to spot it and work with you. And there'll be anything from let you know about the structure, the events, anything that they can see to help you with that. So in the series of talks that we have, the next one is about the case study, but it's somebody took an existing home and then they made it fire safe. Not only from the structure point of view, but also from the landscape point of view. And made a landscape with some of this, working with Kitty, so it's going to bring it all together on the next stop. So make sure that you come for that one and for all of them. And one of the things, we have some maps that we put around in here for you. Try to find where you live. So we have an index map behind the videographer, and then we have the numbers of the maps around it. And you can find your home. Let me know. We can talk about it at the end of the day. So it's my pleasure to introduce Katie Connolly. She's the Executive Director of the Theodore Payne Foundation, and she will let you know everything that she knows, which is a lot.
Everything. Thanks, Jay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. This is really a wonderful turnout. I do want to warn you, I am getting over a cold, so I have hot tea, Kleenex, and throat spray. So I'm prepared, but you should Be prepared to. So I'm going to cover a wide range of things related to landscape, including how to make initial assessment of your site, why you should be planting native plants, which is our function, and some suggestions of what types of plants are good plants to consider to make a fire-wise landscape, and a few examples of plants that we recommend. I saw a beautiful ceanothus on the way in tonight that was in full bloom out by the main road. First, Theodore Payne. He is not Thomas Paine. He's not an American patriot. Theodore Payne was an English horticulturist who came to the United States when he was 20 to make his way in the world. And he fell in love with California native plants. So he, over the course of his career, he retired in 1960. So he had his first nursery that he started in LA in 1903 on Main Street, downtown. So between 1903 and 1960, he brought more than 400 different kinds of native plants into cultivation, and his practice moved from a more general nursery practice, including vegetables and petunias, to where he just focused on native plants and worked on developing some of the first native plant public gardens in Southern California. This was a garden from 1915 on Exhibition Boulevard right next to USC. It was a 5-acre garden in 1915 of California native plants. Felix Chevrolet is on the site now. Theodore Payne's nursery is now the Los Feliz Costco. So he's got all these connections with Los Angeles history. But what I really want to talk to you about is fire. So this is La Tuna Canyon. This is where I work. The Theodore Payne Foundation is in La Tuna Canyon in Sun Valley, and which is also a equine zone. So it was nice to see the horse properties along here. But we had 2 fires this fall, and fire is inevitable here. In the light of fires, one of the questions that comes up quite a bit, there are 2 questions I think that come up quite a bit in relation to native plants. One is, native plants burn, why would you plant native plants? All plants burn, so you can't have a plant that's not going to burn, so that one we don't have to deal with too much. And the other is, why aren't we going out and replanting hillsides? But they will recover on their own. So that leaves us a question of why put native plants at your house? And the reason is, one, we have the most extraordinary flora in the United States. We have more endemic plants in California, plants that are found nowhere else. We have delightful plants that have great smells. We have great diversity. We have, as you know, the state is quite geographically diverse, and that has led to fantastic diversity in our plants. Native plants, so let me just say, native plants want to live here. This is one of the real reasons to plant native plants. They like our climate, they like our soils, they like the rainfall that we get. This is where they want to live. So instead of fighting against nature to get your garden, to get, occasionally you'll have, I tried to grow blueberries for a while. Growing blueberries is just foolish. I had to change the soil to make it more acidic. I had to water it as if it was in New England. It's didn't work. I just go to the store. I get blueberries from Trader Joe's now. I want to work with nature in my yard, so it's one of the reasons to grow them. We're in this Mediterranean climate, which is the rarest climate on the planet, and you probably will agree, the best to live in. Fantastic climate. Hot, dry summers, cool, wet winters, ideally cool, wet winters. Very few, they're all on the west coast of the continents. We have here in Los Angeles now lots of plants from these other Mediterranean climates. You probably all have plants from Australia at your houses and in South Africa. Quite a few plants from South Africa and Australia made it here. Rosemary, olive, oleander, these are all from the Mediterranean region. So all of these plants are happy to be here, but they don't support the animals. So Conservation International has declared Southern California or California floristic province as a biodiversity hotspot, which means that we have a lot of plants that are found nowhere else, and they're also endangered. Sorry about the overlap here. California has lots and lots of plants that are found only in California, and we've lost about 75% of our native vegetation. It's been converted. So, why the natives? One, they're beautiful. They're really beautiful. Because we have such a diverse flora, we have many choices of what we can have in our gardens. Gorgeous plants that can form beautiful aesthetic landscapes that you would not necessarily notice they're native. This particular iris is called Canyon Snow, and it's a great garden plant. So you have great garden plants along with some native plants are a little more wild. They're more like cats than dogs, but we have the dogs as well. Very happy to be in your yard. But the real reason, the thing that native plants can provide that no other plants can provide is the relationship with animals. Lots of people want to save water these days. So they want to have a drought-tolerant landscape. They want to have drought-tolerant plantings. And you can do that. Lots of plants will use very little water, but only plants that have evolved with the animals are going to support the animals and make your yard come alive. They supply critical habitat to animals. The animals cannot live without them. Yeah, who wants California quail in their yard? You probably have a lot of California quail there, don't you?
No.
No? You need more native plants. And put the cats inside. Keep the cats inside. That'll help. But what we're really talking about here tonight is your house. And there's an approach to fire safety that is maybe a little extreme. Just like put your house in a bubble. Keep it protected. You have no problem then. But it's kind of a lousy way to live. So, and I'm going to reinforce some of the things that you've heard in the other speaker, and then Ellen Mackey will come and reinforce them again. So what we're trying to do is repeat. When you look at fire safety, you have to start at the house. You have to start by doing these assessments. Having the fire department come and do this assessment for you is a fantastic thing. I would definitely urge you to take advantage of that. You look at overhangs, look at double pane windows instead of single pane windows. Look at where the plants are in relationship to your house. If you have overhang with plants growing under them, that's very bad. Also overhang where dead leaves can collect, it's very bad. When I first, I've been at the Theodore Payne Foundation 4 years, and when I arrived, one of the first things I noticed was that the part of the house it had no foundation, it was just hanging out. I was like, oh, there's a lot of dead leaves underneath there. You might as well just be throwing live matches in there every day, because it's going to catch on fire. We enclosed that now. So you have to be very mindful of the house. So you want to start from the house, even when you're thinking about landscape. Proper design and maintenance are going to give you safety. Design isn't going to do it alone. You have to maintain. We have to maintain the property. So this particular house is on a tour that we're hosting next weekend in Calabasas, which is a Firewise Gardens. It's a three house tour, so it's a very short little experience. But Calabasas is an area where there is also very high risk of wildfire, so we thought it would be a good place to have examples. And this is one of the houses that we're doing. You can see that they have the driveway and the pavement are out in front of the house. One of the reasons that you do that is so that when the fire department comes, the firemen can get to your house. You really, really, really want to make sure that they have a place to work next to your house. It's like you can't really like have cookies out for them, but you can have a place for the firefighters to get up next to your house. It will make a big difference.
Cookies will work.
Cookies will work too. Okay, we'll go with the cookies. So the way I like to think about it is design your garden so that you can see it from inside the house. You're probably not actually going to spend that much time sitting in the car at the curb looking at your house, but you're going to spend a fair amount of time in your living room or in your kitchen looking out the window at the garden. So you want to be able to see the garden from inside. So if you think about it that way, the plants will be further away from the house, so they won't catch embers close to the house. They'll intercept embers before they get to your house. And the space right around the house, if it has low ground covers, gives an area for the firefighters to work. So again, we go to maintenance. Have you seen this image? Did they use this image before? This is fantastic. I love this image, the comparison. So landscape is great. I'm a big garden person. I really believe in gardens. But we have to have gardens that serve our needs. You need to keep the trees away from the chimney, at least 10 feet away from the chimney. Keep branches. Where I live, they recommend 6 feet off the roof of the house, but sometimes it's 10 feet clearance off the roof of the house. Keep bushes. One of the this lower right-hand one of the things it does is show the space between planting beds. So you have planting beds, and then you have space between them. And that can be mulch, or it could be bare ground, or it could be gravel, it could be paths. You want to have to give the chance for the fire to change its behavior. So it's not going from plant to plant to plant. It might be in one planting bed, but you have a chance to interrupt it before it travels on to the next planting bed. So you're kind of interrupting the space a little bit. Ground covers close to the house. I think Jay talked about it a little bit, and it's not in this image, but if you have firewood, don't pile up the firewood next to the house, even though it's really convenient to have it right there next to the back door. Not a good idea. You should have your firewood away from your house, your sheds. If possible, not have fences come in contact with your house, wooden fences that could burn. That's a little tough. Yep. So another thing that you should do is get rid of all the invasive weedy plants that are around your house. Now, I work in an organization that's about California native plants, and sometimes people get the idea that that means kind of a live and let live with plants. So if these plants come into your yard, then you should just leave them, they're doing well, let them go. But gardening is actually an exercise in control. You're choosing which plants to have in your yard, you're choosing how to maintain those plants. The garden should serve your purposes. And having fountain grass, highly, highly flammable fountain grass in your yard is not a good idea. And it will spread and it'll go to every little nook and cranny. It's low effort gardening, but you'll definitely need that insurance seminar if you're going to be doing that. Castor bean, black mustard, these are the weedy plants that you're familiar with because they're all over Southern California. You may have fennel in your neighborhood too because you're close to the coast, and fennel is a very bad weed close to the coast. So I was just going to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to put all those things out. Looking at your site. So I know that this community was settled quite a few years ago, probably in the 50s and 60s. Most of the gardens were established. So it may be that, I heard someone talking earlier that his trees were getting old and he was getting rid of them. He was having to remove trees and start over. So it may be a point where you're thinking about your garden afresh, either because you've just moved in or because the landscape has reached its lifespan, and it's time to refresh it. So you want to think about where you live, your soil, your site. How many of you know what kind of soil you have? Yay! Yay! A couple. Yay! So if you just dig a hole in the ground about a foot deep and a foot wide and pour water in it, you'll have a really good idea what kind of soil you have. Does it drain quickly? Is it sandy soil? Does it take 24 hours to drain? Then you have clay. Or even 6 hours is clay. Or is it something in between? Assessing the soil is actually really easy. This is also the squeeze test. If it holds together really well, you have clay. How much light? These are the kind of things that you would just look at. But these are the kind of things that you've got to think about when you make your decisions about your garden. So the first thing is, what do you have on site? And then what do you want? What do you want from your garden? Most of us want some places where we can be outside, really. So you want to have some kind of seating area, some kind of gathering place, maybe a place for kids to play. If you have kids, you may want some lawn. If you don't have kids, you may not need any lawn if you're not going to use the lawn. Fire management is the key for us here. So think about your plants. I saw quite a few eucalyptus trees in the area, which are actually great for fire, as far as being highly flammable. So think about that. Do you want to keep those plants in there? This is the part that I'm kind of skipping a bit because I want to get to the actual plants. So you've looked at your site, you've decided what your conditions are like, you've decided what you need, what you want your garden to do for you. Then make a little sketch. Just make a little sketch of what you already have. This one shows existing lawn area where the neighbors are. You want to have some vegetables. Maybe, actually, I would expect somewhere on this plan you'd have where your trash can is, where your spigots are. If you have a view you want to keep, put that on there. If you have a view you want to screen, put that on there. So you can plan your garden ahead, thinking what you want that to achieve for you. You want to have, in this case, remember, you're sitting inside the house. I'm not encouraging you to spend all your time indoors, but plan your garden thinking sitting inside, looking out. So you want to have some space around the house with low ground covers underneath the windows. So that brings you to style. What kind of garden do you want? I tend to show some pictures of modern gardens, kind of modern, a little geometric gardens. Probably not what the aesthetic is here. It's probably a little more cottagey and informal, naturalistic. But there are lots of things that are possible. And one of the things that I brought today were some tickets for our native plant garden tour, which is not this weekend, but the following weekend. So I brought some tickets to raffle away so you can go out and see some gardens. There are a number of them in the South Bay, so there's some close by. When you're planting, there's a real temptation to get the biggest possible plant you can, so you don't have to wait as long, right? So you want instant gratification is enormously appealing, but if you want your garden to do well, what you should do is plant the smallest possible plant you can get, that you can stand. So a plant that's a 4-inch plant in a little container like this will catch up to a 1-gallon plant within a year. And a 1 gallon will catch up to a 5 gallon in 2 years. So what happens is the plants are much better established. The roots get established in the soil much more firmly and organically the smaller they are when they go into the ground. So go for the smallest plants you can manage. and plant your plants far enough apart so that when they're mature, you're not having to prune them constantly to keep them off each other. This is perhaps the hardest thing to do, and I fail at it myself because I put out my plants and then I think, I'd like another. I think it'll fit. And then you try to put another plant in. But you can see here, these plants are pretty far apart. So that means your first year, your garden is going to be mulch. It's going to be mulch. So if you're planning to hold, say, a family wedding, plant the year before the wedding. Don't plant the season before the wedding because the plants won't be big enough. This garden also shows a really nice path system that breaks up the beds, that isolates the beds from each other. So that gives a chance for the fire to slow down between growing from plant to plant. In the meantime, while you have these plants that are really far apart, you can stick in filler plants in between them. Monkey flower is a beautiful, beautiful California native that usually lives in the garden about 3 years, which is about exactly when your other plants are going to grow into each other. So you can stick that, you can have like the instant gratification of this plant that's completely covered with flowers. And then in 3 years, you pull it out and it's over. Flax will do the same thing. Flax will reseed though, monkey flower is not going to. I'm a big monkey flower fan for that reason. Plant in fall. Theoretically, the rainy season in Southern California. Sometimes it's the rainy season. What you want to do is think about the first year as the year that it takes for the plants to get established. One of my colleagues likes to explain there's the reason they call it a nursery. When you bring the plants home, they're babies. You're taking them home from the nursery, and they are not drought tolerant when you bring them home. They have to get their roots established first. So what you're doing is really establishing the roots. When you plant, a California native plant, or actually any plant, you dig the hole where the plant's going to go, fill it with water, and let the water drain into the hole, drain into the ground, before you put the plant in. So what you're doing is setting up a situation where the plant has the same kind of conditions as if it was just raining really well. So the water, all the soil underneath is wet. It'll encourage the roots to go down into the wet soil. It's really about roots. The first year you're really growing roots. So you want to have, if it hasn't been raining, you dig that hole, fill it with water, let it soak in, and then plant the plant, and then water it again. So you want to keep it pretty evenly moist during the first year to get them established. After that, a California native plant garden will use between 50 and 80% less water than a conventional garden. I say 50 because you might plant some California native grasses. If you just plant shrubs, you're going to save, your water bill will be 20% of what it was before. And that's a bargain. It's like 80% off, okay, I'll take it. But there are so many choices of California native plants. Remember, we have at least 7,000 different plants in California. So there's lots and lots of options. There's a website called Calscapes, CALSCAPES. And in Calscapes, you can enter your zip code, and it'll tell you what plants are native to your zip code. If you want to plant actually really local varieties.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really handy. So if you have a choice and you want to make a choice of a more local variety, being mindful that local varieties are more adapted to thrive where you are, which means less effort on your part, then local is good. Go for the fire-resistant plants. Oaks have nice, thick bark that helps them live. So you want plants that are easy to maintain because maintenance is key to a fire-wise landscape. So you want a plant that you don't have to do a lot to, because then it's in good shape all the time. if you have plants that are drought tolerant, then they'll be well hydrated very easily. So a plant with well hydrated leaves is much less likely to catch fire. If you have a plant that requires, so like maybe you've grown impatiens, has everybody grown impatiens and forgotten to water it and come home and it's lying on its side and it's all crispy. Very hard to hydrate impatiens, keep them hydrated all the time. If you have a plant like this Arctostaphylos, this manzanita, it's really easy to keep it hydrated. Remember, you're only using 20% as much water as you were before. So it keeps them good. Low growing, slow growing. Slow growing means less maintenance, and they're gonna live longer and they won't die. They won't have as much dead wood on them. So you want fleshy leaves. So what I have now in this section is just a few example plants that are good, relatively they're fire-wise. We'll say fire-wise, they're not fireproof. So manzanita, emerald carpet manzanita is a good low-growing manzanita. If you replace if you replace like a front yard and you want to have low-growing plants in the front that are green, manzanita is an excellent choice. They require very little maintenance, maybe once a year I would maintain this sort of plant. And they give you this solid green look. So you, from a distance, you won't even be able to tell that it's not some grass. A little lumpy, maybe. But you don't have to mow it. Another manzanita, Howard McMinn, is a real champ. This is a really good plant. Really easy to grow. You'll see here that it's been pruned up. So that's one of the reasons you do that one is because it's got gorgeous bark, this deep red bark. But another reason is so that fire doesn't climb up the leaves, climb up the branches. So you're kind of keeping a separation between any fire that's on the ground and fire that's in the plant. Very adaptable. Howard McMinn, it will put on an amazing floral show that is a magnet for hummingbirds. My manzanita is actually blooming right now and still covered with hummingbirds, even though it's April. Very strange weather. Dr. Hurd manzanita, which is a bigger tree one. It's a little bit hard to see here, but this has been pruned up as well. This is more like a small tree. These will get, fully this size. This is my one, and this is from a few years ago. It's still growing. Lovely plant, easy to deal with. I actually never prune it. I never prune it. It doesn't require anything. I cut this up a little bit, and that's it. Occasionally, I take out little dead branches. I think I failed to tell you that one of the real reasons to grow California native plants is because they require very little maintenance. So you'll have lovely animals in your yard, but you'll be able to enjoy them because you won't be gardening all the time. Lemonade berry has good, solid, good, heavy green leaves, very green leaves. Deep roots, great on slopes, to hold your slopes, because I think you have quite a few. I look at this picture here, and it's like, what you need is things that hold slopes. Lemonade berry and Russobot, the laurel sumac is also really good. This one, I realized I had this picture in my slideshow, and this is a no-no because these are plants that are right underneath the window. It's like I didn't have another picture to put in, but this is a don't in this case. Don't put these shrubs right under your window. On the other hand, they make a really nice hedge. Yeah.
Question, are any of these not tasty to gophers?
I can't address that directly, but I will tell you, gophers are native and these plants are native. So they must have gotten along. You know, so the plants still lived. There are a lot of California native bulbs. Gophers will eat them all. Because people eat them too. They're quite good. So We have not had problems with them. We usually have we have a lot of ground squirrels and not so many gophers at work, and I don't have gophers at home. So I wish I knew. Toyon? Do you have naturally occurring toyon here? What do you do? Yeah. Great for birds. Fantastic for birds. Lovely plant. Hugely covered with flowers. I think the flowers of toyon are, the berries are so dramatic that you forget that it's this huge floral show in June. Lovely plant, a small tree, can be trained into a small tree. Calliandra, Calliandra is a desert plant, so it's not really from this part of the state, but it blooms all year round, and it attracts lots of animals, lots of hummingbirds, birds. There's always insects all over these plants. Here's some that are, these are at Caltech, planted in a public space, so therefore they're tough. I mean, if you can have it on a college campus, it's a tough plant. Excuse me. A few more ceanothus. This is a ground cover ceanothus. This might be what was out there on the main street. Completely, this is the same plant. That's it out of bloom, and this is it in bloom. It's like really spectacular show with the anchor bag. Very low growing, 1 to 2 feet. Concha is a little bit bigger. It's more of a shrub. The ceanothus have these the evergreen leaves that are easily hydrated. They're good fire plants. This is a concha. This is a really spectacular concha. And this concha was grown by our former director of horticulture. I just planted one, so I'll let you know if someone who's not the director of horticulture can grow one quite as nicely as this one. Like that's a really spectacular plant. Easily trained up as well. And people love grasses, so I threw in the deer grass, which is a native grass. This would have to be trimmed out every year to get rid of the dead material. I would trim it every year. But one of the great things about deer grass is, these are ladybugs. Ladybugs overwinter in deer grass. So if you have a vegetable garden, deer grass is a great companion plant. Or if you have roses or anything that gets covered by aphids, which includes milkweed in my garden, then the deer grass is a great plant. You can just have one of them. They're actually quite large. But the ladybugs will overwinter in it, and then you'll have them there in the spring when the aphids come out, and the ladybugs will be happy to eat them up. Chalopsis makes a really nice little tree, small tree. Completely, it's deciduous, so it's good if you want to preserve a view, if you want to have a view or sunshine in the winter. But it gets covered with these beautiful flowers, and hummingbirds like them. They're also really easy to keep up and open and trimmed up. So they're a nice plant for managing fire behavior. And of course, redbud. Everybody loves a redbud because it's April and the redbuds are coming into bloom. I wanted to have this in here. The western redbud, a gorgeous thing. Now, redbuds have this a special bonus for me that leafcutter bees use the part of the leaf to cover their nests. So what they do is they cut these little half circles, and they take that, and they're cavity nesters. So they'll lay an egg, and they'll take that circle of leaf and seal their egg in with a little bit of food, and then they'll lay another egg, and they'll seal the next one in, and they'll seal them in. So when you see this sort of scalloping on the edge of your redbud leaf, that means you're creating habitat, and you're making a home for leafcutter bees. I also think it's quite decorative, because it's kind of fun. They're never going to, this particular plant is at the post office on Los Feliz Boulevard. So it's in the middle of the city, and these leafcutter bees don't have very many options. I have red buds at my house, but there are more red buds in the neighborhood, so we don't get the density of activity as this one, but it was really sweet. I thought it was very sweet. A butylon, so more into the flowering shrubby bits. Indian mallow, this blooms practically year round and has big fuzzy gray leaves that are very, very soft and are food for butterflies. They eat the leaves just a little bit. But this is a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. Very felty leaves. If you're interested in California native plants and want to know more about them, this is the book that you need to get. California Native Plants for the Garden. This has been out for a number of years, and it's available in paperback now. And it's, I used to swear by Sunset Western Garden book, of which I have maybe 5 copies of, different editions. But now all I use is California Native Plants for the Garden. And I feel kind of bad about my Sunset Western Garden book. If you're starting, interested in starting a native garden, this book, Wild Suburbia, is by an author who lives in, well, actually the authors of the other book lived in Southern California too. She lives in South Pasadena, and she's talking about her own garden. And one of the things I really like about this book is it includes the failures and the things that go wrong, because you're dealing with living things. There are things that are going to go wrong. So it's very approachable, and not that Concha in the Director of Horticulture's front yard. You know, it's like, oh, there are steps between planting a native plant and getting that. So Barbara talks about that. So you can come and visit us. I know that I heard one person say they had been to Theodore Payne, bravo. So we're in Sun Valley, up in the near Tahunga. So near Big Tahunga Wash, in La Tuna Canyon, way up in the San Fernando Valley. We're open Tuesday through Saturday. We have a bunch of classes. I'll talk about that in a minute. But our native plant garden tour is our next big event. The garden tour is a showcase of all different kinds of gardens in different parts of Los Angeles, in different styles, because one of the things that we want to do is show that there are lots of ways to have a California native garden. You can have a designer work on your garden. You can do it yourself. It can be large, it can be small, formal, informal. This is a woodland garden underneath existing pine trees. This one is in the middle of the city, in a property that was a medical facility, medical offices, and they repurposed it into a home and built this right in the middle of historic Filipino town on Beverly Boulevard. Or you can just have a cottage garden too. So small, large, you can have lawn, you can have grasses. California native grasses actually support a lot of butterflies. But mostly you want to create nice, cozy outdoor spaces that are safe. You can go crazy and just have wildflowers if you want. But that's a lot of work, actually. Wildflowers are gorgeous, but they're a lot of work, because then you have to clean up after them. So the Theodore Payne Foundation, this is what we do. Inspire and educate Southern Californians about the beauty and ecological benefits of California native plants and the landscapes. We have a nursery where we grow plants, just like Theodore Payne did. We're continuing his work. We have helpful, friendly staff who will help you learn which plants to plant, especially if you know your soils. They'll ask you about your soils. So you go away happy. She had skipped work that day. This is a customer who we found her picture. We work with students, of course. We do field trips. We work with teachers. We do lots of outreach all over Los Angeles. We have lots of classes for adults and for professionals. We're working with public housing in the city of Los Angeles and putting in native plant demonstration gardens at the public housing sites, which is super great for us because it's if you're a gardening organization like we are, we're based in horticulture, it's very hard to work with renters. They don't have control over land. So this is really great for us that the landowners are wanting to work with us. We have a huge volunteer corps, which is what all of our work is based on. It's based on people. When I first came to the foundation, I was so surprised because I came from a botanical garden background and we were very, very focused on plants. And then there were some animals. And we didn't really pay that much attention to the animals. We were very much in plants. And I came to the foundation, it was all about animals. But in fact, it's actually all about people. It's only people who are going to get these things done. But we are doing it for the love of the plants. The Manila hot poppy. Do you have Manila hot poppy? Yeah.
No, but the Crockers do, they have gorgeous Nutella.
It was a great plant, but plant it with care.
They take off and get
They take off and get everywhere. Yeah, they do. So that's my presentation to encourage you to grow California native plants safely. So thank you, and I'm open for questions, although I won't be able to answer all of them.
Question, is it possible to find these things at Home Depot or is someplace local?
You know, there's Tree of Life is the closest, Tree of Life is in San Juan Capistrano. They're the closest large,
I lived there with Lauren. Oh, did you?
it's a large California native plant nursery. It's a commercial nursery, we're a nonprofit. There are some, the question is, can you find California native plants at Home Depot? And in fact, there are some California native plants that they will carry at Home Depot, but they will largely not be labeled California native plants. So white yarrow is a California native plant. And you may very well already have some of these things, like coral bells. There's native coral bells, or heuchera. But they're not necessarily going to be labeled California native plants at Home Depot. We are working to persuade them to carry more.
There's a native plant organization that's local, and they do sales twice a year, I believe, with at Madrona Marsh.
Yeah.
And I think they may also do one at the Botanic Gardens, but Rick Dykesel is very active with them. And he brings by flyers and lets us know when they have the native plant sales.
South Coast Botanic Garden is developing a native plant garden. And I know they do some sales in the California Native Plant Society. They have a local chapter. Their meeting was Monday night. And they have sales too. So if you just look for California native plants and then near me, you'll probably find some.
I missed the part about the soil. Is all of our area the same kind of soil, or each home has different soil?
So the question is about soil, and is the soil uniform? And I would say just looking at the topography of your area, you need to check. You need to check your soil. And it may be that your soil on your property isn't uniform all the way across. There's different levels of soil assessment, but just knowing your drainage is usually enough. So digging the hole in.
How do you figure out what your soil is?
You dig a hole in the ground, about a foot by foot, and then pour in a gallon of water. And pour it in all at once, and then see how long it takes to drain. So it's highly technical. You can just do that, and you'll get almost everything you need to know about your soil right there. Because
when you say that you're going to go to somebody, like when you show the picture and you say, oh, they're going to ask you what your soil is.
Yeah.
What amp?
So you can go back to them, right? So you can say, my soil, I couldn't even pour the water in; it went right out the bottom of the hole. And they'll say, oh, you have very sharply drained sandy soil, which is actually because I don't have it's always envy the other person, right? I don't have sharply drained sandy soil, so I always love sharply drained sandy soil. If you dug your hole and you fill it and it takes 12 hours to drain, like you come back and you come back tomorrow and there's still water in it, you have clay. And somewhere around 40 minutes is loam, something around that. So, and it's open to interpretation a little bit, but if you go to a nursery and you tell them you did that and how long it took to drain the soil, they'll know what that means. They'll be able to help you. And at our nursery, clay is the most difficult to grow in. So we have lists of plants that grow in clay, and we have all the plants are labeled if they grow in clay. Yeah, so we have our easy plants, and the easy plants are all clay plants because the hard sites are the clay sites. So a plant that grows on a hard site is an easy plant.
Would you recommend amending the soil?
The questions about recommending amending, and we never recommend any amendments at all. No amendments, no fertilizers, no pesticides. Yeah, remember it's the lazy gardener method. Very few times do you need to actually do any kind of pest control because the local organisms are there, they're on the spot, they're taking care of it. Very rarely, I actually get a lot of oleander aphids on my milkweed. So sometimes I just hit it with a hose. But then once the monarch caterpillars are there, I can't do that, and then I just fret. But mostly, so what I'm doing is planting deer weeds, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. We don't recommend amending the soil. When we're growing the plants in the nursery, we do a little amendment because they're not really in soil, but they're adapted to grow in our soil.
Okay, and how about pine needle droppings and all that? Do you leave it on the soil?
Yeah, we take them off the plants, but leave them on the soil.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there are some plants that like more acidic soil, and if you have really acidic soil, then you would want to tell the person at the nursery that, so they can help you find plants that are going to grow well in pine situations.
Okay.
Yeah, because it can change the pH of the soil a little bit. Most of our soils are very neutral.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions?
No more questions? Not gardening questions? Okay. Thank you all.
So one of the things that we really like about this talk is that it's giving you choices for those first 30 to 100 feet around your home, your garden. So you notice the spacing was very important. You notice that trimming up was very important. We noticed that the species that are small and easy to manage are very important. And one of the things that happens a lot is that it gets away from us. I give an example, oleanders or some other plants like bougainvilleas, in no time gets away from you. And now you have something that creates problem. This is low maintenance, low water use, and it keeps the vegetation maintained and fire safe in the immediate part of your home. And that's something that we really stressing from last time that Cliff Hunter was here to Kitty and going at what we're going with Ellen Mackey is that part that you have control, that you can do a lot and make it pretty at the same time. And you don't have to be bending over all the time to do the hard work. So from the house out, and this is something giving you some tools to make your home safe. I know everything grows here in this part of in the Palos Verdes Peninsula, but I think having some good choices is something to have. So Kitty gave you a great presentation of some of the stuff that you can use, but I noticed all of their pictures, low maintenance, a low water use, spacing, and if a fire happened to come to your home, there'll be less impact to your home, hopefully no impact to your home. So that's the whole idea with that. Any questions that you may have with that? So the things I want to encourage you is to sign up. It's in the green paper right here. And sign up to have Mr. Whitney and his staff, Chris Mina, to come over here and do an assessment on your home. And we'll be sharing some of the stuff that you are doing. The other one I want to encourage you also to do is to sign up with us, because when we're going to start putting all this community wildfire protection plan, the first word of it is community. So we need your input. So sign up with Yolanda or with Eva or with the staff and say, I want to be part of putting this together. And we'll have some workshops when they get all this information in developing the community wildfire protection plan. Now we're going to have a quick exercise right here. Mina, could you give us a hand with this? So,
and then we're going to do a raffle, so don't leave.
Oh, yes. And one of the things that we wanted to do is, what you learned today, and if you were here before, or you learned here before, or what is important to you that you think it should be in the community wildfire protection plans. Something that you have in your mind that you want to share with us and say, hey, I think this should be part of the community wildfire protection plan. And then just let us know, yell it out, and we'll go from there. So any ideas? Anybody has something? Yes, madam.
Clear any easements so you can get to the bottom of the canyon?
So get to the bottom of the canyon?
Yeah, there's a fire
Access?
down there, yeah, so you guys have easy access, so the
Okay.
easements are kind of open.
Okay. Open access to the bottom of the canyon. Okay, that's got one right there. Anything else that you guys have in your mind that you think that it should be part of the community wildfire protection plan? Any programs, any concerns that you may have that you guys want to say today?
Identify high fire plants and trees.
Okay. Thank you, Mia. She's left-handed, she does this so well.
I know.
And she did it.
Repeat the answers because you can't hear them.
Repeat what she said.
Okay, the question was,
To identify high fire plants and trees.
the question, or the statement was to identify high fire-prone plants and trees.
Yes.
Okay.
Talk about evacuation and evacuating large animals.
Okay. The statement was talking about evacuation or evacuating large animals. Or discuss. Yes.
We have a lot of open space on a lot of our houses. You know, we sit on acreage, and I know that most of what we're talking about is around the house within that 200 feet area, but some suggestions for dealing with grasses, mustard plant, things like that on private property in excess of the 200 feet.
Okay. Suggestions on how to deal with grasses and vegetation outside the 200 feet.
Right.
That are-
In open spaces,
An open space.
not landscape, just open spaces and pastures and things
Okay.
like that.
And some suggestions on that. And she's saying 200 feet because that's as far as LA County Fire Department annual defensible space inspection goes to. It can go up to 200 feet, but then after that, property owners are on their own. So, good.
Identify invasive species.
Identified invasive species, thank you.
You need to bring in stakeholders in this process, Rancho Palos Verdes, the Land Conservatory, and the school district by St. Fisher's. Because the school district, apparently by St. Fisher's, seems to think that that's a great place to bring all of their waste trees and pile them up, from what I understand.
Perfect.
So you need to bring those folks into the equation here.
Okay.
Both the Land Conservatory, City of Rancho Palos Verdes, and the school district.
Okay. So the statement was to bring the stakeholders into the discussions and be part of the creation of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And we have part of the CWPP, I'm glad you're saying that, is the collaboration. Actually, the first part of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan is collaboration. So the city is working on a list of all of the people that has something to do with your city. And it can be from power, water, telephone, cable, communications is a big part of it, because for your evacuations, you're going to need that. So conservancy, land conservancy, anybody who has something to do with your community will be part of the list, and we'll invite them to be part of the discussions of this. Great point, sir. Yes, madam.
My understanding is that we've had a fire that was caused by a car battery, one of those rechargeable cars. So maybe if you guys could give us information about that, because they're kind of popular now. If you need to do any special screening in the garage from the house, if you're going to have one of those electric cars, maybe information on that would be good for people to have.
Okay. I'm not really sure about that, but we'll find out. We'll talk to the local battalion chief and find out what that was, and we'll come out. So,
Basically, like the risks of electric cars and how we can help ourselves.
exactly. So, I mean, we do it for the other cars with catalytic converters. Yeah. So we do it for that, but we take a look into that too.
Well, it's for when they're charging.
I understand. So we did it for the catalytic converters. Now we're going into a new type of transportation. Let's find out what it is. Yes, we'll put it in there and hold that. Yes.
If there's any way that you could provide resources, you know, referrals for resources, we have shrubs in our canyons that are way out of control, and your regular gardeners and stuff are not capable of getting down there and doing that. We're not asking for the fire department to do that, that's not your responsibility. But if you have contacts or referrals of companies that could come in, and maybe a bunch of neighbors could go in and hire them and clear a canyon, you know, part of a canyon or something like that.
Okay. So statement will be list of resources or vendors that can do fire hazard reduction in the canyons, in the areas away from their homes. Okay.
Okay, another thought I have is there are a lot of people who like to walk the trails. I think that many people have good intentions. If you had a sign at the trailhead, say maybe a picture of a thistle and had a picture of it, and you said this is a non-native invasive plant, if you can remove it and take it from the area, take it. Because I think people would be willing to do that. I mean, when I go out, sometimes I take a plastic bag and fill it up with trash and stuff. But I don't feel like weeding unless I've sort of got the blessing to do so.
That's a good point. When I have time, I run trails, and I find myself running around, and it's all castor bean. And I just take it with me. And
I don't know what a castor bean looks like, but if somebody had like a little picture of 3 plants.
So somebody made a point right here. Identify native species. So what we can do, part of the CWPP, we'll put a section of non-native species. How's that?
Yeah, if they had like a laminated paper where the trail names are, and it said, invasive, non-native, remove.
Okay.
I think it would.
You know that poster, the nasty 7 or whatever it is, of all the invasive plants? We give them away for free at the foundation, just so that you can recognize them, because how do you know for sure that you're not taking out someone's precious plant, right? That it's the invasive thing and you're going for the right thing. There's some educational material about it with the pictures on them, sort of like wanted posters.
Unfortunately, I had a handout that I just brought very few copies of it, and Mina's going to bring more next time. And we're going to bring a bunch of non-native plants handouts next time. But there's some back there, but there's one that said, do not plant these plants. We're going to bring a whole bunch of those. And then you guys in the city decide what you want to do. Yeah, this one. It's a whole bunch of here, but we do have non-native species that you can identify it. Ones on top are red, do not plant this, so I'll bring some of this and we'll have more, but we'll go with that list of doing that.
The other thing is, when I first moved here and I would walk the trails, I would see these little signs with the names of some of the plants, and it would say, California native or whatever. And I really enjoyed seeing those, and it kind of, teaches you a little bit. But I don't know what's happened to those signs. If anybody knew a Boy Scout that wanted to do a project, that would be great to have.
They were at,
I think we would enjoy it.
by Cab Ring over in the picnic area, and
Wait,
down
Mrs.
that
Burke?
first loop trail where all the lemonade berry and things was. So when that area, when the picnic area kind of went away, just the signs went away, but that was a group of people that had gotten together.
We ran out of gas.
Did it.
Excellent. So
It was a demonstration.
informal signage
garden.
for native
It was a
plants.
women's
Yes.
club
Right.
demonstration garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful it's good to know what not to do, but it's good to have a listing, just like we saw here with the common name and the genus name for native plants with a picture that's posted on our website so that people who want to plant native plants can have a resource to go to and see what it looks like so they can recognize it in a nursery. And the benefits of native plants, just a summary so that people know why to plant native plants.
We're gonna do a little game with this later.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
That's all on your website, right?
Yeah, it's a bit dense though, and then we might make a slight.
So I'll let you know we're gonna do this. Anything else that you'd like to add to this list? Okay, I'm passing along 2 dots. Everybody gets 2 of these dots. And then you're gonna come right here like we did it last time. And you're gonna come and put the dots. We already counted this, so no big deal. You're gonna put the dots right next to the areas of this new list that you think is important. So you guys decide what is gonna be first, second, third, and all that. We'll try to include all this in the list, but you guys right now, by your vote, gonna decide what you wanna to be important right here. So I'm passing that along. Meanwhile, anything else that we should? Yes. Anything else? Everybody gets
2, okay, no more than 2. So you can, so whatever you think is most important that you think.
So.
Give her 2 dots.
I'm gonna read it, she's gonna tell me where to put them.
Voter fraud.
She's gonna read it.
Any questions that you have for me? Any questions you have for Mr. Durbin, Mr. Whitney, and Mina? Yes?
One question, is that mulch very flammable? Because it's nice to use the mulch. Is it dangerous for us to use it? It looks like it would catch on fire if it, if it's not transparent.
I was reading some studies. The question is, how dangerous is bark mulch? Some mulches are more flammable than others, like the shredded mulch and pine mulch, pine needles, are more flammable. And apparently the worst thing you can put out is shredded rubber. Because once it starts burning, it's also producing lots of toxic gases, so that is very bad, synthetic mulch. But bark mulch doesn't burn that quickly. If you're really concerned, you can do gravel, or fine gravel, or decomposed granite in between the plants. So it will burn, but it's not going to be, an ember landing on it is not going to just spontaneously burst into flames, probably.
So on that same subject of mulch, most of the time when you see or hear about mulch, it's a thin, spread thin, a couple inches, maybe a little bit more. But what about in a situation where there's literally acres and acres of it? Some of it's spread, some of it's still in the same pile that was dumped in.
With the steam coming off.
Yeah, that's probably not something. So the question is about mulch yards. I mean, this is not someone's garden you're talking about. This is a public facility of some kind, or institutional.
For the assessment, if you want to sign up.
It's open space, but somebody has chosen to
Dump their mulch, their cuttings, their.
not just theirs. I mean, it comes in truckload after truckload,
Right.
and it's just piled up.
If it's decomposing, if it's actually decomposing, it's probably producing a lot of heat. Yeah.
So it steams.
Yeah, it steams. It's not very common that a mulch pile would spontaneously combust, but I wouldn't want to be around it.
So the risk is if a fire gets to get into it,
Yeah.
it'll be a slow moldering fire for a little bit. I'll check with the local battalion chief and find out if there's any plan for that over here. Is this a specific location that is happening? Okay. Why don't I get with you and then we'll go from
The
there.
school district, isn't it? It's the school district.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's talking about the compost piles, and on my property, I take on 15 to 20 truckloads at a time. I monitor it, I've never seen the pile, I'm putting a thermometer in it all the time, and I've never seen it go over 120 degrees.
So there are some facilities that do that, and they managed. Actually, this is one in Tohonga, and there's different places. Lopez Canyon, for example, is another one, and they manage mulch. And meanwhile, it's away from structures, things like that. But we can talk and see what it is, making sure that it's been done safely. And I'm sure it is, but we just double check. How's that? Okay, so everybody, we have your list right here. Do we have one more item in the back?
I put it on that
Okay.
slide after also.
So all of them are right here. So come over here, put your dots right here. Thank you very much for coming tonight. If you have any questions for us, do it here. Oh, hello, one last thing. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
So, the Native Plant Garden Tour, 15th Annual Native Plant Garden Tour. So I neglected to bring raffle tickets. You're gonna have to tell me whose birthday is closest to today. Which birthday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. You really can't.
Happy birthday.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna have to
Here you
take.
go.
I can't drive, she has to.
Do you have proof? We've got voter fraud going on.
Whose birthday is next? Whose birthday is next?
April 8th.
Oh,
There you go.
nice.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Sunday, huh?
really
Sunday.
close. Yeah, Sunday.
Happy birthday. on Sunday.
Yeah.
You see, and then you can celebrate the garden tour the following week.
Yeah. There you go.
I'll be.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. Please give a hand to Keith. Excellent.
I'm gonna put line circles up.
Okay, come on up. Yes.
Does it matter?
No, she put it all in one page. She put it all in one.